Muslims nowadays don't
This is the problem
refer
with
to
Shia
the
Google,
Quran and
is
Sunnah.
that the authentic and the non-authentic come up when you type it in.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulil Kareem, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi, wa man tabi' sunnatuhu ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back again to another episode, and I'm your host, Ismail Bullock. We're continuing in the very interesting episodes of What a Muslim Believes. And our last episode, we discussed the importance of the Salah and how it is a connection between the person and his Lord. And we gave you various tips on how to improve and get that sweetness in your prayer. Today, Sheikh Asim, we're going to move on to the zakah, the third pillar, this giving of charity. Could you maybe explain to us the importance and, why do we give zakah? What's special about it?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa alihi wa sahbihi wa tada bihudahu amma ba'd. Zakat is originating from the word tazkiyah, which deals with purification. And there are a number of evidences for backing this up in the Quran and in the Sunnah. We would not go into the linguistic part. We would go into what is zakat. Some people consider it to be taxation, and it's not taxation. Taxation is forbidden in Islam. To the ruler to come and say that you have to pay this of your income, as so many non-Muslim countries do, and unfortunately even some Muslim countries as well. Taxation is forbidden, and it is one of the major sins in Islam. If there is no legitimate, and 99% of the cases, there isn't any legitimate reason behind it. It's simply just to gather and collect money. So in Islam, zakat is a different means altogether. First of all, zakat is being given voluntary by the person, not enforced by the law, except in few cases. And zakat is a percentage that is 2.5 or 5% or 10% that is taken from a person's wealth and given to the poor. And that is why in the hadith of Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when the Prophet sent him to Yemen, he told him, inform those who you are calling to Islam that Allah Azza wa Jal has prescribed, has made it mandatory that we take a percentage of the money of the wealthy and return it back to the poor. So it's not to buy arms. It is not to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. On the contrary, it is a social factor that balances the wealth in the ummah.
Point out that you said 2.5%, 5% and 10%. And that's, obviously there's no misconception or confusion to the viewer. From the money, the cash, be 2.5 only, right?
True.
And the other one goes back to the agriculture.
Yes, and I'd like to explain the 2.5%, which is something that is beloved by everyone in the world.
You can imagine the non-Muslim viewers who pay 18, 35, some 40% of their income, like, wow, 2.5, yes, that's cool.
This is exactly, last night I had a person who is from China. I said that try to imagine this 2.5% tax, if it is, we call it tax, we don't like to call it tax, but just for the sake of the audience to understand what we're talking about, is only paid on the unused money for a whole year. Let me give an example. If your salary is $1 million per year and you spend it all and there's nothing left at the end of the year, you don't pay any tax. Zero tax. That means almost all the people in the world will not pay tax. So because if you spend the money, because this helps the poor indirectly, because this helps people to find new jobs. It helps the economy in any country to go on, to continue to prosper. But we pay zakah only on the money that was unused for a whole year, which caused some indirect problems to the poor or to the economy. This is something it's very important for people to consider.
And also I'd like to bring the viewers, I'd like to bring their attention to that the money or wealth in Islam is divided into two types: hidden and obvious or apparent or visible. The majority of the people have hidden money, which is your money, your income, your gold, your silver, your savings. This, no one has the right to come, even the ruler, and say, listen, you have to give me this and that, because this is something of your own. This is something you give or you don't give. It's between you and Allah Azza wa Jal. But the visible or the apparent wealth, this is where the ruler comes and he designates people to collect the zakat. And this happens with people who have farms, and not all the crops we give zakat. Only the crops that can be saved and measured by size or weight, kilograms or liters. But things that you can count, like watermelons, there's no zakat in watermelon, and vegetables. So the zakat is in grain, dates, grapes, raisin, that is, etc. If you have live cattle, then in this case, yes, this is visible. So the ruler sends his man to collect and to take the zakat. But if you, like Sheikh Salim said, if you don't have any savings, that is cash money, and if you don't have items to sell and buy, transactions, you don't have to pay zakat. I could have 4 or 5 buildings, and I'm having them on rent. I lease them, apartments. People are living there and paying me rent. And the rent that comes, I buy other stuff with. I buy other buildings, or I buy cars that I lease. And at the end of the balance, I did not have cash enough for a whole year to go through, and it did not reach the nisab, the level. There's no zakat, even if I consider to be a millionaire, because I do not have this money in my bank account. In monetary is usually measured by silver, and this is 595 grams of silver. So the cost of 595 grams of silver, if you have less than that, there's no zakat, even if it stays with you for 10 years. In gold, it's measured by 85 grams of gold. So if you have 84 grams of gold, and a whole year passes with this in your possession, there's no zakat.
So basically, if we wanted to say like in dollars or something, you would see how much the 85 grams is equal to in dollars. And you see, do you have that much throughout the year? And if you pay, if you don't, you don't. So, and like you mentioned, is that maybe the majority of people are not going to even pay the zakat.
If this zakah was implemented as it should, it would save a lot of this poverty you see in a lot of these countries which have been loaned by the international monetary, they would basically, and they can never get out of this debt. You see a lot of this would be, neutralized. And that reminds me of who they called the 5th Khalifa, or the 5th Muslim ruler, because he was so close in his piousness to the first 4, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And it said that during his time, that the zakah was implemented so perfectly that when they would come the next year to those that they considered to be poor, they would refuse it, said, we still have from the years before, we're no longer really poor. So it just shows you that if that was...
And this leads us to who should be receiving the zakat. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned this clearly in verse 60, chapter 9 in the Quran, that zakat is to be paid to 8 categories of people. One of the 8, not all of the 8 divided through them. And these 8 people, I don't know if my English is going to help me translate it, but it's for the fuqara and the masakin. Fuqara are the poor, the masakin are the needy. Poor meaning that they have nothing. Needy means that they have something, but it is not sufficient for their normal life. فقراء المساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم. Those who are designated by the ruler to go, they can take their wages not from their own whims, but from the ruler telling them that they can take a portion as salaries, and also whom their hearts are inclined to Islam. So if we have a tribe in Africa, and the dignitary or the leader of that tribe is inclined to Islam, we would give him from the zakat, so that if he accepts Islam, then this would be good, inshallah, for the rest of his population. وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَالْغَارِمِينَ وَفِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. فِي الرِّقَاب, this is a source of paying the zakat, those who are captive. Some say those who are captive, some say those who are enslaved. So Islam promotes freeing slaves.
This was 1400 years ago promoted, not they came in the Western country where they abolished
slavery. As a matter of fact, Islam came to emancipate the slaves. Slaves existed prior to Islam, and Islam came with the solution. So if someone points the finger, say, what is the solution in your belief? It is Islam that provides the solution.
It's true. So the captive, even if we have prisoners of wars in Islam, it is a source of paying zakat. وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَالْغَارِمِينَ. And this is one of the sources of paying zakat. Those who are indebted to the extent that they might be imprisoned, or their death occurred because they were reconciling between two tribes. So if I know of two tribes fighting and feuding and there's a possibility of war, and I intervene and I say, listen, how much you need for your losses and damages, and I give them from my own pocket, it is permissible for me to take from the zakat because of the good thing that I had done. Or if I incurred a disaster, something happened, force majeure, my business was burnt to the ground and I have debtors that want their money and I'm unable to pay them, Islam tells the community, give this man from the zakat. So the credit crunch also has a solution in Islam through the sources of paying for the zakat. The last two, وَابْنَ السَّبِيلُ سَبِيلًا. So those who are stranded, Ibn Sabil, a person travels to Europe and is stripped of his money, he loses
Lost his wallet or lost his credit card.
and then he doesn't have means to go back, though he's rich. But now he doesn't have means to go back. The Muslim community, give him from your zakat money what is sufficient to go back to his hometown. Once he goes back to his hometown, is he obliged to return the money back? No. This is not a debt. This is not a favor. I'm just giving away what Allah told me to give away. And the last and eighth category is fi sabilillah.
Yeah, we've got to, on that point, we've got to go for a break. Please stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. Before we go into the break, we've been talking about zakah. And now to Sheikh Salim, who has some valuable points on the topic of the zakah.
Alhamdulillah, salatu salam ala rasulullah ala alihi wa sahbihi man wala. The zakah solves this, how Islam came with the solution, pragmatic solution. Islam is a pragmatic way of life. People that have problems, solutions in Islam. Humanity has a lot of problems today. Islam offers them the solutions. Why don't you take the Islamic solution? We have the solution for your problems. So Islam can contribute and solve your problems. So the issue of poverty, how Islam handles that and addressed it through the zakah. And when the zakah was applied properly, as you mentioned the example, they could not find any single poor person during the reign of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. They told him, the zakah collector, they said, oh, we can't find anyone who's in need or eligible for the zakah. He said, then okay, find out and count those who are not married and get them married. And they did so from the zakah. You can see, so the zakah is a pragmatic way of solving the problems. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he fought those who refused to give the zakah. Unfortunately, many Muslims, those who are wealthy, they don't give the zakah. If they give the zakah, there are many studies, you will not find one single poor Muslim family. That's because of the zakah.
But we can see that Islam then was maybe one of the first to fight for the rights of the poor. We hear about, okay, it's not exactly the same, but we hear the story of Robin Hood and how he took from the rich to the poor. But we see that, you know,
Islam, this is
Islam way before this.
1400 years ago, addressed the issue. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr, when they refused, he fought them. He said, by Allah, I will fight whoever differentiates between the salah and the zakah. And those who do not give the zakah, the Prophet ﷺ taught us what will happen to them on the day of resurrection. This amount of wealth will be hated. If it is gold or silver, will be heated on fire, and then you will be branded by these coins of gold and silver. If you have livestock, the livestock are stabbing you with their hooves. And it is the responsibility of the ruler, the state, to step in and take it by force.
If needed.
If needed.
If you are not paying it, the state takes it by force. And nowadays, accounts unknown. You cannot hide. All the money is in the bank. So the state can take it if you don't pay willingly. They take, not only they take it, and they take half of it also, as to remind you, to discipline you. So the next time, before they ask you, you come and you give the zakah. So this is a very serious matter.
And in this zakat, as all of the things in Islam, it shows you any problem that humanity has, Islam has a solution. And if you look, for example, we talked about the prayer before. Why the suicide, why the difficulties people are facing? Because they don't have, they might be in good shape, they take care of their bodies, they work out, but they forget the other part of the body, which is the soul, how to nourish that. The zakat takes care of the poor people. The issue of racism, it was discussed 1400 years ago. All these problems, the issue we just mentioned it before the break. You'll see now that Islam has the solution for all of the problems that mankind is facing. And this is obviously what it does for the Muslim. is that it increases his faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it makes him hold on stronger to his religion. Even now the financial crisis, for example, even the Western countries now find the solution is in Islamic banking. And this is a message or a call for the non-Muslim to look into Islam, look into the beauty of Islam. And how could something, if it wasn't the religion of truth, how can all these solutions be there?
But even
Look
that,
at some...
Sorry, but you, on the issue of rights, even from animal rights, apart from the many sayings of the Prophet Muhammad talking about being kind to animals and not unnecessarily hunting them and not taking the chicks when the mother's circling above, all those different examples, but even, and I believe it was in the time of Umar Abdul Aziz, the first, you could say, hospice for retired and old animals. I mean, it's something that they've done maybe in the last 60, 70 years in the, the RSPCA in the UK and this kind of stuff, but back then, what did the Muslim ruler say? Rather than putting them down, which they do now, he said, just as they served us and cared for us and took care of our needs in various ways, he built a hospice, like a retired, not even a hospice, a retired home for retired animals where he hired people from the government's money to look after, care, feed, bathe the animals.
You just reminded me about this story when Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, he saw a Jew, old Jew, begging. Said, why is he begging? They said, no one to look after him. Said, oh, this is unfair. This is unfair if we used to take the jizya from him when he was young and now to leave him like that. Give him from Bayt al-Mal. See, this is our Islam.
From the money of the Muslims.
The Muslims.
The old
to look
Jew.
And to respect him. This is an old man. We should not let him stretch his hand and beg the people.
Something that you can notice, by the way, when you visit Islamic countries, when you have the majority of the people are Muslims.
Muslims.
I don't recall that in Egypt that I have seen a homeless person. I don't recall that. I recall that I've seen in Egypt many poor people, but not homeless.
And no one would die of starvation.
And I have never seen someone in Egypt or Syria or other countries that dying out of starvation. Although these countries in general are considered classified as developing and poor countries. And this is not the case when you go to some countries in Europe and some states in USA. You find people are homeless and they see them at night. There are many of them in the streets. And I think this is due to the purification or the zakat that the Muslims pay. They don't wait for the government to solve these problems, but they do solve the problems by themselves. This is one of the examples that Islam provides the solution. Even without having an Islamic government, they still can solve the problem of human
Even a lot of Muslims, in some countries where they take the taxes, which is obviously haram in Islam to take the taxes, they still pay the zakat, because they say they take it, consider that to be haram. We want to have the barakah, the purifying of this zakat from our money. So they give the zakat even though the government had taken from the money. And you'll see the blessings, subhanAllah, like you said, in the society.
You just mentioned the tax. Muslims, they should pay the tax. Not try to escape paying the zakat, saying it is haram, but they will carry the sin. Don't try to escape, because then they will say, you'll see on the newspapers, Muslims or Islam, or this Islam is encouraging the people to avoid paying taxes.
You go by the law.
You go by the law, and the sin on them, not on you.
And it's not only the law. The unfortunate that those who abuse and bend the rules, they claim to be Muslims. You find people in the UK, for example, living out of the benefits that the government gives. And they even don't register their wives as wives. And so the wife would go with wearing the niqab, some very minority. These are not practicing Muslims. She would be wearing the niqab and she's 8 months pregnant and she's filing for benefits being unmarried. And the people doing this, we know you Muslims don't lie. Why are you doing this? So they try to tax evade. They try to avoid paying taxes. They say this is a kafir country. Yet they benefit from their roads, from their water, from their electricity, from their
medical services,
health services, and from the benefits that the government gives, and they refuse to pay taxes. This is
I mean, I thought any brothers, actually, when it comes to marrying more than one wife, they are nowhere capable. But say they, I mean, I've heard things like to myself, I'm going to get married. Oh, really? But you're not working. That's okay. She's going to go and sign on, you know. She's going to go and she, you know, she'll claim. I mean, obviously, they can't announce that they're married because it's against the law, but they still can, you know, if you have the capability, then you can get a second wife and you can provide for her. But they will purposely marry 1, 2, 3 wives. And I've known this from brothers who actually have a high-paid job, but obviously having a high-paid job and having 2 or 3 wives can't always work.
Yeah, abusing the system.
Because you're coming with the niqab, but you'll say that, you know, you're unmarried, but you're pregnant. So they've come make fun of them, like the religious
This is unfortunate.
Yeah, I understand. But who put the sister in this? It's the brother, shame on him.
Of course.
Okay, the brother who's living on the dole, and the Prophet ﷺ is telling us the upper hand is better than the lower hand. And the upper hand is the hand of the non-believer. And you are the beggar. Shame on you. And you say, I want to bring the sunnah, revive the sunnah, and you put the sister in such situation. The Prophet ﷺ, when the woman came to him and he said, 3 of your companions proposed, Muawiyah, Abu Jahm, and Usama, he said, Muawiyah, he doesn't have any single penny, he's very poor, don't marry him. So if you can't look after your family, okay, first of all, prove that you are a man, not a male, a man who can look after a family.
Yeah, okay, I just want to point out something very quick. Just add on what Sheikh Azim said. It's so bad that people go even sometimes change their name, or they'll go to different places in European countries, I saw, and register in more than one place. And if they get caught, it's going to be big trouble for them. And like, for example, if we're in America and we're not paying Uncle Sam his taxes, he's going to break down your door, he can take all your belongings, causes more harm than good. And at the end of the day, we have to realize what we're doing. What is the message you're sending about Islam? Like you said, this Muslim woman with a niqab, she's pregnant, not married. What does this say about Islam? What is the negative message you're sending? And it's known that Muslims, they become known as people who are lazy, people who don't want to work. And they say, let's get these Muslims out of here, not do anything. But what on the other hand, if Muslims were to stop doing that and to work hard, even if it was a low-paying job, and to be productive members of that society, what's the positive message it's going to send to that community about Islam, about the Muslims? That's the reality of Islam and of the Muslims and those who act upon it properly.
Again, to the end of this episode. Inshallah, join us for the next episode where we've finished from Zakah. We'll move on to the topic of Ramadan, that month every year where us, the Muslims, fast. So join us. And until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.